Right on the blockbuster set of The Fifth Element, 1997, director Luc Besson divorced his wife, who was working exhaustingly as a stand-in to pursue his lead actress, while his legal wife struggled beneath suffocating costumes to salvage the shooting schedule. Besson and his leading lady, Milla Jovovich, were handwriting letters to each other using a 400-word alien language he had entirely invented. Even before the cameras could roll, music legend Prince had flatly rejected a role, declaring the costume designs an insult to his aesthetic sensibilities and personal pride. The demise of a marriage, the firm refusal of a music icon. These are merely the surface of a string of ironic, dark truths buried for nearly 3 decades. 1. A director's wife takes the fall, only to receive divorce papers. In 1997, global audiences applauded the character of Diva Laguna. They saw a glittering alien opera singer commanding the stage. What they couldn't see was the bitter reality of the woman hidden beneath the heavy makeup. This role originally belonged to someone else. When the initial actress abruptly packed her bags and walked out at the 11th hour, the entire production schedule flashed red. Director Luc Besson was out of options. He pushed his own wife, Milla Jovovich, into the spotlight as a desperate replacement. Thick, suffocating rubber glued tightly to her skin, breathless, sweltering. Yet, Milla didn't complain. She sat patiently for hours in the makeup chair, pouring her energy into saving a multi-million-dollar project. She kept the investors' cash flow from bleeding out. But what Milla received in return was not gratitude. Right there, while the cameras were still rolling amid the chaotic backdrop of Pinewood Studios, a divorce unfolded, cold, decisive. The atmosphere on set sank into a stifling silence. Hundreds of crew members watched a family shatter right before their eyes, yet no one dared to utter a word. 2. A public stroll on the red carpet with a new lover. That marital fracture had no time to heal. It was instantly paved over by a swift and brutally public replacement, not long after erasing his ex-wife from his life. Besson stepped into the light with a new romance. It was none other than the lead actress, Milla Jovovich. The 1997 Cannes Film Festival served as the stage for this grand debut. Hundreds of camera lenses flashed relentlessly, despite the probing, judgmental gazes of the press. The director calmly walked alongside Jovovich down the prestigious red carpet. They strode like victors. A hasty wedding was organized that very same year. This sudden marriage instantly cast a scandalous spotlight over the film's entire promotional campaign. 3. An alien language twisted into a tool of romance. This shocking relationship didn't materialize overnight. It bloomed right in front of hundreds of crew members. It was an open secret, yet everyone chose to look the other way. Instead of hiding, Besson and Jovovich found a method of communication so blatant that no one bothered to expose it. In the script, Besson had created the divine language, a complex system comprising 400 vocabulary words, under the guise of professional rehearsal. The director and his leading lady used this very vocabulary to pen private handwritten letters. They conversed daily in bizarre, foreign syllables, amidst the clamor of hundreds of technicians. A language designed purely for cinematic illusion morphed into their own private tool for romance. The blatant favoritism thrived amid the chaos of a $90 million construction site. Yet the crew chose silence, ensuring the massive project kept moving forward. 4. The legend Prince flatly refuses a role out of pure pride, before that romantic mess even ignited. The project hit an impassable wall, the immense pride of music icon Prince. In the 90s, Prince wasn't just a singer, he was an ideology, an untouchable monument no one could control. The role of the flamboyant broadcaster Ruby Road was originally tailor-made for him. The director desperately craved Prince's magnetic pull for box office dominance. However, all financial negotiations collapsed the moment Prince laid eyes on the costume sketches. Designer Jean-Paul Gaultier had conceptualized an outrageously extravagant outfit. Prince immediately turned his back. He deemed it an insult to his personal taste, fundamentally contradicting the aura of an artist who strictly governed his own image. This self-respect was proven by a real-life anecdote years later. At a nightclub, Prince crossed paths with Chris Tucker, the actor who eventually took over the discarded role. When Tucker playfully questioned Prince's own eccentric fashion sense, the music legend simply stared him dead in the eye and coldly replied, "But that's my design. You understand, my design." It was a declaration of absolute class. Prince would rather walk away from a Hollywood blockbuster than drape himself in a garment dictated by someone else. 5. Psychological manipulation to trap Chris Tucker. Prince's firm refusal backed Besson into a corner. The shooting schedule was draining away day by day, and the director was forced to bring in Chris Tucker as a replacement, according to Tucker's later interviews. Besson knew well that the bizarre costume was enough to make any man flinch. So, he decided to set a psychological trap, instead of presenting the actual design. Besson slid a massive sketchbook across the cold glass table. On the white paper was a disastrous, revealing, and utterly illogical drawing so absurd that Tucker sat paralyzed in his leather chair. The ticking of the clock echoed through the suffocating silence of the casting room. The actor fell into fierce resistance, his chest heaving as he prepared to refuse, waiting precisely for that moment, after stretching Tucker's boundaries to the absolute breaking point. Besson slowly turned the page, revealing the official sketch. The manipulation worked flawlessly. A design that was initially hard to swallow suddenly felt like a safe haven. Tucker breathed a sigh of relief and nodded in agreement. His arrival brought roaring laughter under the studio lights, filling the void left by the legendary Prince. But few knew that in the darker corners of that very set, his co-stars were enduring a ruthless physical exhaustion. 6. The leading lady's ruined hair under chemical assault. The vibrant orange hair of the character Lilu has burned itself into pop culture. Audiences saw a glittering sci-fi beauty. But the true cost was paid entirely in physical suffering. That image wasn't crafted from digital pixels on a computer screen. Every day at exactly 5 a.m., the suffocating stench of bleach filled the makeup trailer. The styling team continuously slathered high-concentration peroxide directly onto Milla Jovovich's naturally brown hair. A grueling, months-long schedule forced them to repeat this brutal process over and over. Under the 90-degree Fahrenheit heat radiating from the 10,000-watt studio lights, the actress's hair structure was essentially incinerated. By the 4th week of filming, chunks of her hair turned as stiff as dry straw, snapping off and washing down, clogging the metal drain of the salon sink. No cinematic magic could hide the severely damaged scalp. Facing the threat of shutting down the entire production, the crew hastily cast a mold and manufactured a synthetic wig. They stretched it over her head, violently securing the pins into her scalp to ensure the second half of the movie kept rolling. 7. The high-flying kick was actually a prosthetic leg. Jovovich was no delicate vase. Sweat dripped onto the blue foam mats daily as she gritted her teeth through grueling martial arts training. 8 solid hours of kicking left both of her shins severely bruised, with dark pools of blood trapped beneath her skin. The director kept the cameras rolling, demanding that every martial arts movement be razor-sharp. But the human skeletal limit collided with the physically impossible demands of the script, for the high kicks aimed straight at the ceiling, twisting at angles that tore at muscle fibers. The production team realized they were flirting with severe injury. They opted for a different physical escape route, an optical illusion engineered right on the plywood floor. They brought in a fiberglass prosthetic leg wrapped in rubber. As the camera framed a tight shot on Jovovich's face, a crew member dressed entirely in black stood just outside the edge of the light, gripping the prop tightly with both hands and hurling it violently into the air. The sound of the fake leg slicing through the wind was captured by the microphones. Audiences sat gripping the theater armrests, holding their breath and cheering for a visually stunning, unstoppable strike. A strike that never actually existed. 8. A voice pushed beyond the boundaries of human biology. Physical limits didn't just hinder the stunts, they poured cold water on the film's musical ambitions. The intricate aria, the diva dance, was handed to the renowned soprano Milla, but as she unfolded the crumpled sheet music on her cold metal stand, a medical reality became undeniable. The human vocal cords are simply not built to transition notes at a speed and leap in amplitude spanning 2 octaves within milliseconds. It was biologically impossible. Milla stated this plainly to the director in the recording studio, but the production machine only demanded results. She was forced to stand behind the pop filter, patiently taking deep breaths and projecting isolated high notes, delivering fragmented hums until her throat was raw and dry. For weeks afterward, in a dark post-production room smelling of stale coffee, illuminated only by monitors reflecting off bloodshot eyes, sound engineers began their surgery, clicking, dragging, and piecing together dozens of fragmented tape scraps. They manipulated the pitch using electronic algorithms. The legendary voice echoing through theaters turned out to be a haunting blend of human flesh and the cold, calculated manipulation of machines. 9. The masterful deception capturing the cast's true terror. To capture film reels carrying genuine psychological weight, Besson refused to lean on standard acting tricks. He didn't want rehearsed tears or manufactured shock practiced in a mirror. He wanted genuinely accelerated heartbeats. Behind the heavy wooden doors of the Pinewood set, the massive blue rubber suit of Diva Plavalaguna was kept under strict lockdown. When the red recording light flared on, the celluloid cameras began their familiar, mechanical hum. The hydraulic hinges screeched as the stage doors slowly parted. Blinding white spotlights instantly struck the towering alien creature. Bruce Willis froze on the wooden floor. His absolute shock, widened eyes, and stiffened face, along with dozens of extras holding their breath below, were entirely unscripted. It was the 100% genuine reaction of flesh and blood humans laying eyes on a bizarre, towering entity standing just feet away for the very first time. 10. Arch-enemies who never shared a single second on set. For over 2 hours, Bruce Willis as the hero Corbin Dallas and Gary Oldman as the ruthless dictator Zorg are the twin pillars of tension driving the narrative. Audiences gripped their seats, waiting for the inevitable moment these two men would collide. But the backstage truth was a slap to those expectations. These two men never shared a single breath of air on set. The brutal reality of a European shooting schedule, combined with budget checks calculated down to the minute, forced them down completely separate paths. The zip of a canvas duffel bag echoed as Willis packed his belongings, climbed into a car, and vanished before Oldman even stepped off the runway. The fierce confrontation audiences swore was real on screen was nothing but an optical illusion. Oldman stood alone in a desolate studio, screaming venomous dialogue at a piece of blue tape stuck to a metal C-stand. Every camera angle was meticulously stitched together in a dark room, forcing two men who never looked each other in the eye into the same million-dollar frame. 11. Taking a role blindly to settle a debt of gratitude. Gary Oldman walked into the costume department of this blockbuster with a highly unusual mindset. His fountain pen scratched across the thick pages of a legal contract, signing on for a role without ever flipping through a single line of the script. In an industry that measures success and failure strictly by box office returns, such a blind leap was tantamount to throwing his career out the window. But this decision stemmed from a quiet, pre-existing transaction sometime earlier, over a dinner smelling of roasted meat and the clinking of silver cutlery. Besson had pulled out a pen and written a check, fully financing Oldman's directorial debut. Kneel by mouth. Accepting the role of the villain Zorg was the actor's way of cleanly settling that financial debt. Oldman publicly admitted to the press, referring to his time in front of the camera as simply singing for his supper. 12. A villain crafted from a politician and a cartoon rabbit. Stepping onto the project with an entirely empty head regarding the plot. Oldman was granted absolute power to mold the character's persona himself. He stood before the dressing room mirror, using his hands to adjust the edge of a transparent plastic headpiece that was leaving red marks on his forehead, and began stitching together multiple personalities. He borrowed the raspy Southern American drawl and the cold pragmatism of independent presidential candidate Ross Perot. Immediately after, he blended it with the incessant blinking and unpredictable, chaotic energy of the cartoon character Bugs Bunny, the squeak of rubber soles dragged across the plywood floor as he walked with a pronounced limp, carrying an air of supreme mockery. A real-life politician fused with a cartoon rabbit birthed the villain Zorg. The general audience might not have recognized this satirical formula, but the sheer madness of the character clawed its way into their memories. The absolute freedom of a veteran actor had birthed a classic cinematic antagonist. 13. Film relics crushed beneath a forklift. Every grueling physical sacrifice and psychological manipulation on set was nearly flushed down the drain by a pathetic physical blunder. The heavy scent of aviation fuel blanketed the airport tarmac as cargo was being unloaded. The leather-gloved hand of a freight worker slipped. The metal canister holding the 35mm celluloid film of Diva Plavalaguna's most expensive scene slammed onto the rough concrete. To make matters worse, the solid rubber tire of a 4,000-pound forklift backed up and crushed it directly. Cold sweat broke out on the foreheads of the film editors locked in a dark Parisian editing suite. Thrust into an emergency race against time, each person desperately gripped a magnifying glass, inspecting every shredded, torn frame of celluloid under the cold white light of the light table. They used clear tape to stitch together the rare, intact slivers of film salvaged from the wreckage, cleverly cropping the framing to hide the physical scratches and rescue the most crucial sequence. The technical team finally saved those violently crushed reels. But could the clever patchwork in post-production ever conceal a script whose very roots stemmed from a lonely soul? Written in the suffocating dead end of youth. 14. The only escape for a lonely 16-year-old boy. Hollywood's money-counting machines typically launch sci-fi megaprojects in plush. Carpeted boardrooms suspended dozens of feet above Los Angeles. Places with the quiet hum of air conditioning and glossy, leather-bound contracts. But The Fifth Element didn't possess that privilege. Its origin was a dilapidated attic, buried deep in an isolated countryside, over 50 miles away from the glamorous neon lights of Paris. There were no soft carpets or warm fireplaces, only biting winds from the empty fields howling through the cracks of rotting wooden window frames at night. A 16-year-old Luc Besson sat huddled under the sickly yellow glow of a dangling incandescent bulb, standing at the crossroads of an agonizing youth deprived of familial warmth. Besson once admitted that he faced 3 brutal choices. The first reeked of alcohol, drowning himself in cheap liquor at the local bar until his throat burned, just to numb the pain. The second was a permanent silence, making a tragic exit from life before even reaching adulthood, letting the darkness swallow his despair. And the third choice lay right on the scratched wooden table, a stack of rough paper and a leaking ballpoint pen. That teenager chose to pick up the pen. The scratching of the nib across the empty page was the only sound echoing through long, sleepless nights. He drew flying taxis hovering thousands of feet above the ground and towering, stacked cities piercing the sky of 2026-30. It was the perfect escape, Besson later shared. That universe wasn't meant to be a popcorn blockbuster. It was a paper life raft stained with sweat, keeping a solitary boy from sinking into the abyss of hopelessness. 15, the image of the taxi driver and a silent gratitude. When the character Corbin Dallas squeezes himself into the cramped cockpit of his bright yellow flying taxi, taking a drag of a cigarette mid-air, audiences simply view it as gritty, sci-fi world-building. But hidden beneath the surface of that futuristic text is the stench of exhaust, the sticky texture of engine oil, and very real fragments plucked from the author's heavily scarred life, placing the savior of humanity into the worn, torn leather seat of a cab driver was no random plot device. It was a deeply personal tribute Besson dedicated to his own biological father. During the years when his family fell into their most desperate struggles, when meals consisted of nothing but dry crusts of bread, his father had to grit his teeth and cling to the steering wheel. Every night, while the children slept soundly on thin mattresses, that man would start the engine. The roar of the car echoed through the cold, mist-soaked streets at 3 a.m. The sickly yellow light from the street lamps washed over his exhausted wrinkles and bloodshot, sleep-deprived eyes reflecting in the rearview mirror. Calloused hands constantly shifted gears, scraping together cold metal coins from passing strangers just to secure the next day's food for his family. The image of that quiet man, draped in a coat smelling of stale smoke and gasoline, was permanently seared into Besson's mind. He didn't choose to embrace his father in tears. That symbol of silent sacrifice woven through his pen became a mute thank you, never spoken aloud by a son, permanently sealed within a work of science fiction. 16, a script massive enough to swallow 4 blockbusters. When Besson finally gathered enough courage to take his brainchild to the doors of major studios in 1991, what he slammed onto the negotiating table made studio executives frown in hesitation. The thud of the manuscript hitting the glass table was heavy and deafening. It was a stack of yellowing paper weighing nearly 4 pounds. Inside were 400 pages densely packed with typed text, the result of metal keys relentlessly striking a black ink ribbon over many long years. According to strict cinematic industry standards, where every single page formatted in 12-point Courier font equates to exactly 60 seconds on screen, that colossal volume was enough to squeeze out 4 feature-length films. It clearly reflected the suppressed ideas and dense inner turmoil of a man over decades. He had poured every frustration, every wildly insane imagination into that stack of paper. But the men in gray suits running the studios didn't care about the soul. The brutal wall of commercialism forced Besson to take a scalpel to his own child. The sound of tearing paper echoed in the script room. Hundreds of pages filled with heart and soul were slashed away by glaring red markers and tossed straight into the aluminum trash can under the desk, forcing a massive universe to fit neatly within the 126-minute box of a theatrical release. 17. A time paradox no one can resolve. The act of dissecting an unfinished manuscript, tossing it in a drawer, and repeatedly dragging it out for revisions since adolescence left behind permanent. Physical scars. The film's timeline shattered right on the silver screen, creating a paradox that observant audiences simply couldn't ignore. Viewers felt the heat of swirling Egyptian desert sand in the opening sequence, with a number deeply carved into the sun-baked limestone, 1914, immediately after. The screen cut to black, and crisp white text emerged 300 years later. Anyone could do basic math and arrive at the year 2214. However, as the camera transitioned, zooming in on the plastic alarm clock by the protagonist's bed, the red LED digits blinked an entirely different message: 2263. The chaos didn't stop in the theaters. Decades later, if you ran your finger over the glossy back of the domestic DVD released by Pathé, the synopsis explicitly locked the year at 2257. It didn't end there. Opening the thick, rough pages of the autobiography penned by the director himself, titled The Story of the Fifth Element, he confidently placed the events in 2259. 4 distinct timelines for the exact same story. To this day, the production team maintains absolute silence. This paradox exposes an indelible system error born of a cinematic project incubated for far too long. The irony is haunting an author spent his entire youth constructing this universe, only to ultimately lose his grasp on time within the very world he created. 18. An extreme dictatorship over 900 costumes. The fragmented and chaotic nature of the script's timeline stood in stark contrast to the ruthless control exerted on the camera floor. The authentic feel of the film's environment was enforced by an authority so strict it was suffocating. Legendary fashion designer Jean-Paul Gaultier refused to sip coffee in a heated trailer and absolutely prohibited handing off inspection duties to any assistants. Exactly at 4:30 a.m. every morning, when cold dew still clung to the concrete and corrugated metal walls of the studio, Gaultier was already there. The air in the wardrobe department was thick with the scent of fresh fabric dye, burnt rubber, and floating foundation powder. He walked through a sea of people, using his own fingers to stretch every seam, reshaping the slope of rigid plastic collars. He meticulously scrutinized the rough fabric textures across all 900 costumes worn by the background extras, hunting for a single misaligned wrinkle, to force audiences to believe in a futuristic world detailed to the point of obsession. The production crew was willing to burn massive checks for exorbitant details. There were background actors who stood in the periphery, blurring past the edge of the screen for less than 3 seconds. Yet resting on their shoulders were hand-tailored felt coats weighing nearly 10 pounds. The invoice for manufacturing that single coat carried a cold, hard number $5,000. A flawless obsession built entirely upon mountains of cash. 19. The $3 million Cannes Party. Outside the cramped studio walls, Gaumont Film Studio decided to play a media gamble with a risk level that would make any economic analyst break into a cold sweat. They didn't just burn cash on celluloid cameras, the studio threw between $1 and $3 million in cold, hard cash on a single premiere party. The location, the breezy shores of the French Riviera at the prestigious Cannes Film Festival. The event unfolded with a scale of ostentation rarely witnessed. An entire corner of the French night sky blazed red and orange as tons of fireworks detonated, pounding heavy, chest-thumping booms into the eardrums of the attendees, right on the sand. The scent of expensive champagne mingled with the salty tang of the sea breeze. An exclusive Gaultier fashion show was staged right in the middle of the party, where the sharp clacking of heels on the wooden catwalk synchronized with the heavy electronic bass. Nobody used standard ink-printed paper tickets. Thousands of VIP guests had to present their wrists, feeling the cold plastic casing of a custom-designed, limited edition Swatch watch, acting as their exclusive pass. This display of financial brute force established a staggering new ceiling for European filmmaking extravagance. 20. The American backlash and a global reversal. Despite a roaring promotional campaign fueled by millions of burned dollars, the first impact that smacked them right in the face was a blunt rejection from the American audience. At a dimly lit test screening room in the heartland of America, before the film was even halfway through, disruptive noises began to echo, It was the sound of theater seat cushions snapping upright with a clack, the sound of rubber soles scuffing hastily across a carpet littered with burnt popcorn. Dozens of silhouettes stood up, silently pushing open the heavy metal exit doors and walking out. They couldn't digest the bizarre style, the revealing costumes, and the hybrid rhythm of French cinema. The freezing air from the theater's AC blew straight against the back of Besson's neck. The director sat paralyzed in the back row, his freezing hands drenched in sweat, plunging into an absolute breakdown as he witnessed that ruthless indifference. Besson later confessed to Deadline, "The reaction in America at the time was very disappointing to me. I saw people walking out halfway through." However, the rotation of the globe saved his life with a historic reversal at box offices in Paris, Tokyo, and London. The ticket printers whirred relentlessly. Francs, pounds, and yen flooded into metal registers, accounting for an overwhelming 75% of the massive total revenue. European and Asian audiences completely compensated for the American cold shoulder, rapidly plugging the $90 million budget hole. A project that seemed dead on arrival pulled off a miraculous comeback, reigning as the highest-grossing French film in the world for over a decade. 21. The harsh reality of the Mr. Shadow script. Nearly 30 years have passed, yet the film's echo remains relentlessly loud. At 2 a.m., the green glow of computer monitors still illuminates the faces of insomniacs. Audiences type furiously, dissecting every single frame, while rumors of a sequel manuscript titled Mr. Shadow still hum persistently across film forums. They eagerly await the return of this sci-fi universe, utterly convinced that Hollywood executives are holding it hostage. But the truth behind the buried project carries the signature: cold indifference of the entertainment industry. The truth is, there is no conspiracy. In 2011, inside a jam-packed press conference room, blinding flashes from cameras relentlessly assaulted Besson's eyes. He pulled the alloy microphone close to his mouth, his breath hitting the pop filter, and dropped a flat, emotionless statement. He never had any plans to make a sequel and had absolutely zero interest in pursuing one. The sound of the microphone stand scraping across the wooden table echoed like a physical period at the end of a sentence. This massive sci-fi universe was permanently locked down. That decision didn't stem from a lack of funding, nor was it due to the butchering interference of box office tycoons. It ended simply out of creative exhaustion and immovable, deeply personal choice by the very man who brought it to life. When the writer sets his pen down on the table and walks away, the story is over. Luc Besson began writing this sci-fi world at the age of 16 as an escape hatch from the collapse of his youth. 22 years later, the film was finally born. But the price of its creation was the collapse of the very marriage he was holding on to while on set. Mai Wen continued her acting career and later became a respected director. Besson and Jovovich divorced just 2 years after their wedding. Prince passed away in 2016, his legacy and his pride entirely intact. The film continues to exist in a brilliantly glittering, bizarre, and flawless state on the silver screen, while the people who forged it moved on, living with the remnants they left behind on the Pinewood set. If you want to continue uncovering mysterious and authentic behind-the-scenes files like this one, hit the subscribe button right below so you don't miss the next videos.